Morgan stood at the observation window and watched the frozen planet below. Seven looked like a ball of white and blue ice spinning slowly in the darkness of space. She had seen cold places before. She had lived in Alaska for most of her life. She had trained people to survive in temperatures that would kill an unprepared person in minutes. But this planet was something else entirely. The Galactic Council station hummed with activity around her. Alien beings of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Some walked on two legs like her. Others floated or crawled or moved in ways she could not describe. They all looked at her with curiosity. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only made contact with alien life 3 years ago. Now was about to become the first human to attempt the ice trial. Ambassador approached her with his long, scaled body moving gracefully across the floor. He was a reptilian species that had nominated humanity for this trial. His yellow eyes studied her face with what she had learned to recognize as concern. "You understand what you are agreeing to do," said. His voice was deep and carried a slight hiss on certain sounds. Nodded. 72 hours on the surface, minimal equipment, survive until extraction. "No species has ever completed this trial without calling for rescue," said. "The average time before a candidate requests extraction is 20 hours. The longest anyone has lasted is 41 hours. A warrior nearly died achieving that record." Looked back at the frozen world. "Then why does the Council keep doing it?" "The ice trial tests courage, not survival," explained. "It shows that a species is willing to face impossible odds. No one expects you to actually survive the full duration. They only want to see that humanity has the spirit to try." This made smile. The aliens had clearly never met anyone from her part of Earth. In Alaska, people did not just try to survive the cold. They lived in it. They built homes in it. They raised families in it. Cold was not her enemy. Cold was just a problem that required the right solutions. The doors at the end of the corridor opened, and a being made of living crystal walked through. High Arbiter was ancient beyond understanding. The crystalline entity had overseen the ice trial for thousands of years. Light passed through his body and scattered into rainbows on the walls. "The human candidate will now select her equipment," announced. The voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, like wind chimes speaking words. Followed the High Arbiter to a small room where a table displayed the allowed items. There was a basic thermal suit, a water purification tablet, a small knife, an emergency beacon for calling rescue, and a slot marked "Cultural items of personal significance." "Candidates may bring objects that represent their species," explained. "These items provide psychological comfort during the trial." Thought carefully. Other candidates probably brought religious symbols or family pictures or items that reminded them of home. She had a different idea. "I want to bring tea supplies," said. "Dried tea leaves, a small heating element, a metal cup, and a container for melting snow." His crystalline form flickered with confusion. "You wish to bring beverage preparation materials as your cultural item." "Tea is very important to humans," said. This was mostly true. It was very important to her, at least. Her grandmother had taught her that a warm drink could save your life in the cold. It was not just about the heat. It was about the ritual. It was about having something normal to do when everything around you was trying to kill you. "Additionally," continued, "I want to bring tools for snow construction, a small saw and a flat blade for cutting blocks." "These are unusual requests," said. "But they are allowed." The High Arbiter considered this for a long moment. They are allowed. They fall within the category of cultural items and basic survival tools. Word spread quickly through the station about the humans' strange choices. Heard the whispers and saw the looks. A group of scientists laughed openly at her selections. One of them, a small creature covered in thick white fur, shook her head in disbelief. "The human thinks she can cut ice with hand tools," the said to her companions. "My species has natural insulation, and even we find the ice trial nearly impossible. What chance does a hairless primate have? A massive warrior standing nearby grunted in agreement. His stone-like skin looked like it could withstand anything, but noticed how he kept rubbing his arms as if already feeling the cold. A four-armed adjusted his own equipment and shot a look that mixed pity with respect. At least the human is brave, the said. Foolish but brave. Did not respond to any of them. She had learned long ago that people who underestimated the cold usually did not survive it. These aliens had advantages she lacked: fur and stone skin and multiple limbs, but she had something they did not. She had 10,000 years of human knowledge about living in frozen places. Her ancestors had crossed ice sheets. They had hunted mammoths in endless winters. They had built civilizations in the Arctic. She carried all of that with her. The transport ship took the candidates down to the surface one by one. Was the last to go. She sat alone in the small vessel as it descended through the swirling white atmosphere of 7. The pilot, a bored-looking alien with too many eyes, gave her a final glance. "Good luck, human," the pilot said. "Try to last longer than the others. It would be nice to see something interesting for once." The hatch opened and cold hit like a physical blow. She had expected this. She had prepared for this. But the reality still took her breath away. This was cold beyond anything on Earth. This was cold that wanted to kill her. She stepped out onto the ice, and the transport lifted away. The blizzard was already building on the horizon. A wall of white death moved toward her across the frozen plain. Did not panic, she did not look for shelter. Instead, she knelt down and examined the snow. She tested its weight and texture. She checked how it packed together. She smiled. This snow was perfect for building. The wind screamed across the frozen plain as worked. She had found a small rise in the ice where the snow had packed tight and deep. This was the spot. Her hands moved with practiced speed as she used the saw to cut the first block. The block came free, clean, and solid, tested its weight and nodded with satisfaction. Good snow. Dense enough to hold together but light enough to lift. She had built her first igloo when she was 9 years old. Her father had taught her the way his father had learned from the Inuit people who had mastered this skill over thousands of years. Block by block, the shelter began to take shape, worked in a spiral pattern, each layer tilting slightly inward. The physics were simple. Snow was an excellent insulator. The dome shape distributed weight evenly. A small entrance tunnel would trap warm air inside while keeping cold air out. Humans had figured this out long before they had electricity or engines or any of the technology that the galaxy considered basic. 2 hours into her work saw the first emergency beacon light up in the distance. Someone had already called for rescue. She did not stop to watch the extraction ship descend. She kept cutting blocks. She kept building. By the 4th hour, 3 more beacons had activated. The blizzard was getting closer now. Could see the wall of white eating up the horizon. She worked faster. A sound made her turn. Something was moving through the snow toward her position. Gripped her knife, unsure what creatures might live on this frozen world. But the shape that emerged from the swirling ice was familiar. It was the four-armed warrior from the station. His name was, she remembered him from the equipment room. Was in trouble. His 4 arms hung limp at his sides, and his movements were clumsy and slow. The cold had done something to his coordination. He stumbled and fell face first into the snow just 20 meters from his position. Looked at her half-finished igloo. She looked at the approaching storm. She looked at lying motionless in the snow. There was no choice to make. There had never been a choice. She ran to him and grabbed his upper arms. He was heavy, far heavier than a human, but fear and determination gave her strength. She dragged him through the snow, leaving a trail behind them. By the time she got him to the shelter, her muscles burned and her lungs ached from breathing the frozen air. The igloo was not finished, but it would have to do. Pulled inside and went back to work. She needed to close the dome before the storm hit. Her fingers were numb. Her face was raw from the wind, but she kept cutting and stacking and shaping. The last block went into place just as the full force of the blizzard arrived. The wind howled around the dome, but inside the igloo the sound was muffled. Allowed herself a moment to breathe. Then she turned to check on. The was conscious but confused. His 4 eyes blinked slowly, trying to focus on her face. "Human," he said. His voice was weak. "What happened? Where am I?" "You collapsed," said. "I brought you to my shelter." Tried to move his arms, but they responded poorly. "The cold, it affects my nervous system. My species is from a warm world. I thought I was strong enough." He made a sound that might have been a laugh. "I was wrong." Pulled out her heating element and her metal cup. She packed snow into the cup and held the element beneath it. The snow began to melt. "Drink this when it warms up," she said. "You need heat inside your body, not just outside." While the water warmed, cut a small ventilation hole in the top of the dome. Without it, they would run out of fresh air. The hole was angled so that wind could not blow directly through it. Another trick her father had taught her. A sound came from outside, a weak voice calling for help. Looked at the storm raging beyond the walls and made another impossible choice. "Stay here," she said. "Keep that water warming." She crawled through the entrance tunnel and into the blizzard. The cold hit her like a fist. She could barely see 3 meters in front of her, but the voice kept calling and kept moving toward it. She found the small scientist who had laughed at her equipment choices. The fur-covered alien was curled into a ball, shaking violently. Ice had formed on her fur, making it heavy and useless. Her natural insulation had become a death trap. Did not say anything about the earlier mockery. She simply picked up the small alien and carried her back to the igloo. Weighed almost nothing, but fighting through the storm with her was still exhausting. Inside, stripped the ice from his fur as gently as she could, though was barely conscious. Her body temperature had dropped to dangerous levels. Did the only thing she could think of. She held close to her own body, sharing her heat. "Human," said. He had managed to drink some of the warm water. "Why are you doing this? We are competitors. If we fail, it helps your chances of success." Looked at him like he had said something insane. "Where I come from, you do not leave people to die in the cold. It does not matter if they are friends or strangers or rivals. You help them. That is what humans do." Considered this. His 4 eyes studied her face with new understanding. "Your species is strange, human." "Call me." Another voice called from outside. Then another. The blizzard was driving all the candidates toward their emergency beacons, but the storm was making extraction difficult. Ships could not land safely in these conditions. Looked at her small igloo. She looked at still shivering in her arms. She looked at slowly recovering in the corner. Then she looked at the walls. "I need to make this bigger," she said. Raised one arm weakly. "I will help, tell me what to do." Began teaching him how to cut snow blocks. Thus 4 arms were still clumsy from the cold, but they were starting to work again. Together, they began expanding the shelter. More voices called out in the storm, went out again and again. She found the massive warrior, barely able to move. His stone skin had conducted all his body heat away. She could not carry him, so she guided him step by step back to the shelter. By the 12th hour of the trial, 7 beings huddled inside, expanding igloo. 7 survivors who should have been dead. 7 lives saved by snow blocks and warm water and the refusal to let anyone freeze alone. Put more snow in her cup to melt. She had brought enough tea for herself for 3 days. It would not last long, split 7 ways, but she would share it anyway. That was what humans did. The igloo had grown into something more like a small village, and had built connecting domes, each one linked by short tunnels. The main chamber was large enough for all 7 survivors to sit together. Smaller chambers branched off for rest and storage. The whole structure glowed with a soft blue light as the ice filtered the dim daylight from outside. The storm still raged. It had been 30 hours now, and there was no sign of it stopping. Moved between the chambers, checking on each survivor, keeping the heating element running, melting snow for water. Had recovered enough to sit up on her own. The small scientist watched work with an expression that mixed shame and wonder. "I laughed at you," said quietly. "On the station. I said you had no chance." Handed her a cup of warm tea. "Drink this, it will help." "How can you be kind to me after what I said?" Shrugged. "Being cold does not make your words less true. I am a hairless primate with no natural protection against this weather. You were right about that. You were just wrong about what it means." Wrapped her small hands around the cup and breathed in the steam. "What is this drink? It tastes like nothing I have ever experienced." "Tea. It is made from dried leaves of a plant on my world. Humans have been drinking it for thousands of years." Sat down beside the warmth helps, but it is more than that. Tea is about taking a moment to be calm. When everything around you is trying to kill you, sometimes you need a small ritual to remind yourself that you are still alive. In the main chamber was teaching the others how to cut and place snow blocks. The had recovered most of his coordination, and he had taken to the work with surprising enthusiasm. His forearms made him efficient at the task once he understood the technique. "The human showed me," explained to the massive. "Each block must lean slightly inward. The weight presses down and locks everything together. It is simple but brilliant." Examined a block with his huge stone hands. "My people build with rock. We thought we understood construction, but we never imagined building with frozen water." He placed the block carefully where indicated. "Humans are clever creatures." A fourth alien sat quietly in the corner. Her name was Senna, a thin being with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. She was a species known for their mental abilities. She had not spoken much since rescued her from the storm, but now she looked up. "I have been trying to understand," Senna said. "When I touched your mind during the rescue, I felt something I did not expect. You were not afraid for yourself. You were only afraid that you would not reach me in time." Felt uncomfortable with the idea of someone reading her thoughts, but she tried not to show it. "I had work to do. Fear does not help when you are working." "It is more than that," Senna said. "Your species has a connection to each other that goes beyond logic. Even strangers, even enemies, you feel responsible for lives that are not your own." They shook her head slowly. "My people are telepaths. We share thoughts constantly, but we do not share this feeling, this drive to save others no matter the cost." The conversation was interrupted by a crackling sound from one of the emergency beacons. A voice came through, distorted by static. It was Observer, monitoring from the orbital station. "Candidates, this is Council Observation. We have been watching your situation with great interest. There is a debate among the arbiters about whether your cooperation violates trial protocols. High Arbiter has issued a ruling." Everyone in the igloo went silent, felt her stomach tighten. If they were disqualified, all of this would mean nothing. The voice continued. "The High Arbiter has ruled that the ICE trial only forbids external assistance. There is no rule against candidates helping each other. Your cooperation is permitted. The trial continues." Relief washed through the group, made a sound that had learned was laughter. The council did not imagine anyone would help their competitors. They never needed a rule against it. "Because no one ever did it before," said, she looked at with new respect. "Until the human." Felt embarrassed by the attention. She stood up and checked the heating element. "We should ration the tea. I brought enough for 3 days for one person. Split between 7, it will only last about 10 hours if we keep drinking at this rate." "Then we should save it," said. "Use it only when truly needed." Shook her head. "No, we need to keep our bodies warm from the inside. Cold tea later will not help if we freeze now." She poured out small portions for everyone. "We drink together, we stay warm together, we survive together." The group gathered in the main chamber, sitting in a rough circle, distributed the cups, and for a moment everyone was quiet. 7 beings from 7 different worlds, holding cups of human tea in a shelter made of snow, while a deadly storm raged outside. Was the first to raise his cup. On my world, warriors drink together before battle. It creates a bond. I think this is similar. On my world, we share food with guests as a sign of trust, added. You have made us your guests, even though we are strangers, even though we doubted you. One by one, the others spoke. Each shared a tradition from their world about sharing warmth or food or drink, listened and realized something important. Every species had rituals like this. Every species understood in some way that survival was not just about keeping the body alive. It was about keeping the spirit alive too. The tea was almost gone now, but as looked around at the faces in the soft blue light of the igloo, she saw something that mattered more than any warm drink. She saw hope. She saw determination. She saw 6 beings who had been ready to give up, now ready to fight. The storm howled outside, louder than before. The worst was yet to come, but they would face it together. Raised her nearly empty cup. 36 hours to go. Who thinks we can make it? 6 voices answered as one. We can. Hour 40 of the trial arrived with the storm at its peak. The wind outside screamed with a sound that seemed almost alive, almost angry. The walls of the igloo shook but held firm. Lay awake in the dim blue light, listening to the breathing of her 6 companions. Sleep had come in short pieces over the past hours. They took turns resting, always keeping someone awake to watch for problems, had slept less than the others. Every creak of the ice, every shift in the wind made her check the walls. This shelter was keeping them alive. She could not let it fail. Sat beside her, his 4 arms wrapped around himself for warmth. They had become her most reliable helper. His strength and his willingness to learn had made the expansion of the shelter possible. Now he looked at her with his 4 eyes full of questions. Tell me about your world, said quietly. Tell me about this place called Alaska where you learned to build with snow. Smiled at the memory. Alaska is in the far north of my continent. In winter, the sun barely rises above the horizon. The cold can kill you in minutes if you are not prepared, but people have lived there for thousands of years. First the native people, then others who came later. How did they survive without technology? They had technology, said, just different technology. They learned which animals to hunt and how to use every part of the body. They learned how to build shelters from ice and snow. They made clothing from animal skins that kept them warm in temperatures that would freeze metal. They did not fight the cold. They worked with it. Stirred in his corner, his massive stone body shifting with a grinding sound. My people believe that the universe is hostile. That survival means building walls and weapons to fight against everything that wants to destroy us. Humans thought that way too, sometimes, admitted. But the ones who survived the coldest places learned something different. They learned that the world is not your enemy. It is a puzzle. You have to understand it, work with its rules instead of against them. Small voice came from across the chamber. You speak of understanding, but how did humans understand? Your species is young. You have only had technology for a tiny fraction of galactic history. Thought about how to explain. We learned by dying, she said finally. Generation after generation. Someone would try something new, and if it worked, they taught their children. If it did not work, they died, and everyone else learned not to do that thing. Our knowledge is built on millions of failures and millions of deaths. The chamber was quiet for a moment. Then Senna, the telepath, spoke. I can feel something when you talk about this. A weight, a sadness, but also pride. You carry your ancestors with you. Every human does, said. We are not just ourselves. We are everyone who came before us. Their knowledge lives in our traditions, our stories, our instincts. When I build a shelter from snow, I am not just using my own skills. I am using the wisdom of people who lived 10,000 years ago." A loud crack echoed through the igloo. Everyone jumped, was on her feet immediately, moving toward the sound. One section of the wall was bulging inward. The weight of the snow above had shifted wrong. "Everyone out of this chamber," ordered. "Move to the second dome now." They scrambled through the connecting tunnel just as the damaged section collapsed. Snow poured into the main chamber, filling it halfway. Stared at the destruction, her heart pounding. "We have to fix it," said. "If the wind gets inside, we lose all our warmth." Nodded, already calculating. "We need to seal the breach and reinforce the remaining walls. The storm is putting more stress on the structure than I planned for." "Show us what to do," said. His deep voice was steady, calm. "We will help." For the next 3 hours, they worked together, directed while the others executed her plans, cut new blocks with his 4 arms moving in perfect rhythm, lifted heavy pieces that would have taken 3 humans to move, squeezed into tight spaces to pack snow into gaps. Senna used her mental abilities to coordinate their movements, letting everyone know where help was needed without shouting over the wind. They sealed the breach. They reinforced the walls. They built support structures that distributed the weight more evenly. When they finished, the igloo was smaller but stronger than before. Sat down heavily, exhausted beyond words. Her hands were raw and bleeding from the work. Her body ached in places she did not know could ache, but they had done it. They had saved the shelter. Handed her a cup. She looked inside and saw the last of the tea, carefully heated over the element. "You saved this. You gave us everything else," said. "This one is for you." Wanted to refuse to share it like she had shared everything else, but she saw the looks on their faces. This was not charity. This was respect. This was their way of saying thank you. She drank the tea slowly, letting the warmth spread through her body. It tasted better than any tea she had ever had, not because of the leaves or the water, because of the hands that had prepared it, because of the hearts that had offered it. 12 hours left," said, checking the time on her beacon. "The storm is supposed to break before the trial ends." "We will make it," said. She looked around at her companions, these aliens who had become her team, her friends. "We will make it together." Outside, the wind began to quiet. The storm was finally passing. The storm broke on hour 65, crawled through the entrance tunnel and stood on the ice for the first time in over a day. The sky above was clear and filled with stars. The frozen plain stretched out in every direction, pure white under the distant sun. It was beautiful, it was deadly, and they had survived it. One by one, the others emerged from the igloo. They stood together in silence, looking at the world that had tried to kill them, raised his 4 arms to the sky in what recognized as a gesture of triumph, let out a sound that was half laugh and half sob, simply stood still, his stone face showing something that might have been wonder. 7 hours left, Senna said. "We need only wait now." Shook her head. "The rescue ships will be looking for beacon signals, but after the storm they might have trouble finding us." She looked at the ice around them, thinking, "We need to signal them ourselves." How asked. Pointed at the sun, low on the horizon but bright. "Light. We use the ice to reflect light. If we can create a pattern, something that looks artificial, the ships will notice." They spent the next 2 hours cutting and positioning large flat pieces of ice, arranged them in a geometric pattern, angled to catch the sunlight and reflect it upward. When they finished, the ice field around their shelter blazed with reflected light, a beacon visible for hundreds of kilometers. The wait was the hardest part. They sat outside the igloo, huddled together for warmth, watching the sky. Found herself thinking about her grandmother, the woman who had taught her to make tea and to find peace in simple rituals. She wondered what her grandmother would think of all this. A human woman, sitting on an alien planet, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, waiting for rescue. She would probably just ask if everyone had enough tea. Hour 70 came and went. Then hour 71. then finally saw a glint of metal in the sky. A ship was descending. The rescue vessel landed 100 meters from their position. The hatch opened, and a team of council observers emerged. They stopped dead when they saw the group waiting for them. 7, one observer said. There are 7 of you, that is not possible. It is possible, said, we proved it. The extraction took less than an hour. They were given thermal blankets and medical scans and hot food that barely tasted. The ship lifted off, and 7 fell away below them, growing smaller and smaller until it was just another white dot among the stars. On the orbital station, chaos waited for them. News of the 7 survivors had spread through the entire Galactic Council. No one could believe it. No one could explain it. The ice trial had been running for thousands of years, and no candidate had ever completed the full 72 hours. Now 7 had done it at once. High Arbiter summoned them to the council chamber. The crystalline being stood at the center of the vast room, light dancing through its body. Hundreds of representatives from across the galaxy filled the seats around them. Every eye, in whatever form eyes took for each species, was fixed on and her companions. The council must make a ruling, announced. The human candidate Morgan has completed the ice trial, but she did so by helping other candidates survive rather than focusing on her own survival. Some argue this violates the spirit of the trial. Others argue it represents a new understanding of what survival means. Ambassador stood from his seat. The ice trial was created to test courage and resilience. Morgan demonstrated both beyond any doubt. She also demonstrated something we did not test for, something we did not even know to value. She showed that true strength means making others strong. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, raised a crystalline arm for silence. The other survivors wished to speak. Stepped forward first, his 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of openness. I am a warrior of the people. I have fought in battles across 3 star systems. I thought I understood strength. Morgan taught me that I understood nothing. Strength is not surviving alone. Strength is lifting others when they fall. Came next her small form barely visible among the larger beings. I am a scientist. I believed in data and logic. The data said the human would fail. The logic said helping competitors was foolish. Morgan showed me that some truths cannot be measured. Some wisdom lives in the heart, not the mind. One by one, the others spoke, talked about learning that protection means more than walls and weapons. Senna talked about feelings, compassion, and finally understanding what it meant. Each voice added to the story. Each perspective revealed another piece of what had happened on that frozen world. When they finished, High Arbiter stood silent for a long moment. The entire chamber held its breath. The council rules as follows, said at last. Humanity has passed the ice trial. Full membership in the Galactic Council is granted. Cheers erupted from some sections of the chamber, but was not finished. Furthermore, the ice trial itself will be redesigned. For thousands of years, we tested candidates for their ability to survive. We now understand that this was incomplete. True advancement means not only surviving but helping others survive. The new trial will test both. The crystalline being turned to face directly. Morgan, you have changed our understanding of what it means to be worthy of the stars. The Council offers you a position helping design the new trial protocols. Do you accept? Looked at her companions, the 6 aliens who had become her friends, her team, her family in the cold. They nodded encouragement. I accept, she said, on one condition. Name it. Smiled, tea service for all future candidates. The warm kind, it helps. Laughter filled the chamber, a sound mixing voices from 100 different worlds. And for the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, the ice trial ended not with a single survivor limping home, but with 7 beings standing together, warmed by something far more powerful than any heating element. On 7 years later, a statue would be erected near the site of Igloo. It showed a human figure holding out a cup to a circle of outstretched hands, representing every species in the galaxy. The plaque at its base reads simply, "She shared her warmth,